Hey, Star Trek from the Holodeck listeners, if you want to support our show, help keep us on the air, head over to our Patreon page, patreon.com/RainmanDigital, and pledge $5 or more a month. And when you do, you gain access to an entire library of Star Trek breakdowns, from discussions on Q to the Borg to 7 of 9 and the Maquis. We do it all. And when I say hundreds of hours, I'm not exaggerating. So head over to patreon.com/RainmanDigital and pledge. Help us and help yourself.
Warning, Star Trek from the Holodeck contains adult language and discussions. If you're easily offended, do not continue to listen.
Lock and load!
Fire! Holodeck 3 program is reinstated.
Open sesame!
Commander Klingon vessel. We are energizing transporter beam. Now.
One, engage!
All right, hello. Welcome, everyone, to Star Trek from the Holodeck, the Lower Decks edition. You are listening to us courtesy of Rainman Digital. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify. Just search Star Trek from the Holodeck. I am Michael Flores, your host, and in the studio with me, within the Holodeck, trying to avoid getting killed by Badgey, is David. Hello, David.
Hey, Mike, why does Badgey look like a half-naked T'Pol?
Hey, David, why is Badgey humping your ass right now? Is he trying to wear you?
What is he doing?
He's trying to wear you by going inside. He wants you to wear him.
He wants to teach me something.
He has a lesson to teach you, Dave. Go ahead, grab your ankles. Wow.
Dude, this is actually one of my favorite characters.
Oh, simmer down. No, yeah, I agree. Badgey? Oh, yeah.
Badgey's awesome.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So today we're going to be discussing and breaking down Lower Decks, episode 6 of season 1, titled Terminal Provocation, directed by Bob Suarez and written by John Cochran. The synopsis: the lovable but awkward Ensign Fletcher makes work difficult for Mariner and Boimler. Rutherford introduces Tendi to a holodeck training program that he created. We're on a roll here, Dave.
Dude, this is amazing. Lower Decks just keeps getting better and better with every single episode. It's that progression that in the last episode I was afraid of. Like, I'm waiting for the dip to fall.
I don't want to be hurt again, Dave.
Yeah.
You know, like when you go through a bad breakup and you're not ready for that next relationship because you're cautious. You're like, I just can't be hurt again. I can't go through that. That's how I feel, because I'm starting to really like Lower Decks.
Yes.
And now I'm nervous.
Now you're nervous.
Dude, we're so fucked up. We have so much Star Trek baggage.
Oh,
please
yeah.
don't hurt me, Kurtzman. Please don't hurt me, Kurtzman.
But it's so true, though, because when you come off of a really low, and then let's be honest, Lower Decks did not get off on the good foot.
No?
In the very beginning.
Really? It didn't?
No. But, 3 episodes after the last 3 episodes, they have a huge uptick.
Without a doubt.
In their story, and their writing, their comedy delivery is on par, dude. I mean, this one, it's a toss-up for me, trying to actually figure out where the comedy timing was the best, this episode or the last episode.
Yeah.
Because I blew the writing team hard for last episode, because their comedy writing was just spot on.
Yeah.
It wasn't like groundbreaking by any means, but their timing and their delivery was just really well done.
I don't think any of us want or expect groundbreaking, Trek here.
No.
We just want to have a good time. I'm not trying to hold Lower Decks to some unrealistic expectations. I will do that with shows like Picard and Discovery Season 3, because those are our flagship shows. But Lower Decks, all I wanted was a good time that feels like Trek. All I wanted was for the writers to show their respect and love for Star Trek and their understanding. And now we have 3 episodes in a row where I feel like they found their groove. It's far from perfect, but the last 3 episodes have been really fun.
Well, especially this particular episode, because you see that they understand Trek.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that me and you have been talking about Trek humor.
Right.
And only hardcore Trek fans would understand the humor. But in this one, they were able to make the Trek humor blend well so that everyone could get the joke.
Right.
And if you were a Star Trek fan, you get that just like that extra push because you get it. You get an understanding of it. More.
Right. Well, you can't write a show for just Star Trek fans because what's going to happen is you're not going to be able to bring in any new audiences. And that's obviously one of the biggest goals for the Kurtzman era of Star Trek. In order for a franchise to survive, you got to bring in new demos. And that's why they are catering most of their shows to younger, newer audiences, because the way they look at it is we're a dying demo.
Yes.
You know, we're 40 plus, 35 plus, and we're not going to matter. And we technically don't matter now for most, when it comes to most TV, movie, radio, whatever you want to call sponsorships and demographics for advertisers. We're just not. It's the 16 through 24. That's the prime demo. And that's, for the most part, you're always going to get shows that write for that demo. So they're going to have to write shows that, yes, you got to show your respect and your love. But for the most part, they got to make sure the show also is understood by those people who may not have 40 years of Trek, or I should say 50 years plus of Trek trapped in their brain.
Exactly.
So, and I will agree, Badgey is legit.
Badgey is legit. Badgey was, those scenes with Badgey were hilarious.
Yeah. Very much on par with various I would say with various other archetypes within Mike McMahon's other work. It's very much Solar Opposites, very much Rick and Morty. These are the types of things that we've been waiting for. When you hear Mike McMahan from Rick and Morty fame or Mike McMahan from Solar Opposites, you think things like Badgey.
Yes.
You think a lot about things, or I should say things that come to mind are like moments that we saw in 2 episodes ago with the Ascending.
Yes.
This is more of that. And it was one of my favorite things so far, the whole Badgey aspect of, I would say so far for the first season of Lower Decks.
Well, dude, it makes fun of one of the things that I always loved about Star Trek, I guess you could say mythos, is the whole idea of the holodeck.
Oh, yeah.
Where they could create any character they ever want. It's kind of like what Rutherford said. It could be Cyrano de Bergerac, Einstein, all these Shakespeare, all these characters. And then it made me remember that, in TNG, what is the one thing they kept doing is they kept dealing with the holodeck, and all of a sudden the AI of the holodeck would go awry.
Right.
And Badgey was just the stereotypical thing, but but Mike McMahan ramped him up. Like, when he started going crazy.
It was a heightened cartoon version of things we've seen before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, it was so funny when he basically, essentially, it started very innocently enough with him being like a joke about the old Microsoft Clippy character. And suddenly you get to like, he starts looking and says, hey, can I teach you a lesson?
Yeah, Clippy never worked either. Fuck that
exactly.
Guy. Fucking hated that thing. I'm like, how do I get rid of you?
How do I get rid of you?
Please go away.
And I felt so sorry for Rutherford when it comes out that the only reason he designed Badgey was to impress
Tendi.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that explains why this program is all messed up.
Yeah, so it does work in terms of Star Trek as well, because you get that moment where they get to play into the numerous holodeck malfunctions we've seen in Star Trek. I mean, just to mention a couple of them, TNG's most famous holodeck malfunction is probably the episode Elementary Dear Data, which you and I had already referenced a couple episodes ago.
Yeah.
When they had brought up Moriarty. Then we also have one that I really enjoyed from Star Trek Voyager, where Picardo's doctor becomes an evil murderer.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. That one was a good one.
Yeah, Vicious. I mean, fuck, dude, that's when I knew Robert Picardo was a good actor, because that guy plays he's very dynamic.
Yes.
That guy is so multidimensional when it comes to his performances, and that scene always has stuck, or that episode has always stuck with me, because he played such a convincing, horrible person.
Well, that was the beautiful thing about like the potential of these holographic characters that TNG came up with. They can do whatever they want with them.
Right.
And when Robert Picardo took over, it was an ability to actually show how good of an actor a person can play like that. That's why me and you, the one thing that was always a positive in our Picard reviews was the holodeck, the hologram scenes. Getting a chance to see, I think it's Rico. Is it the captain of the captain of the ship that had all the holograms? I can't remember his name. You forgot him now.
I blocked out that show.
You blocked out that show. But
David, if you bring up Picard one more time.
But it's a positive thing of Picard. It's a positive thing.
But the memory, dude, it's like being raped, okay? It's like being raped, and you just want to forget it happened. You just want to move on with your life. You've gone through therapy, and then there's that one person that says, "Hey, remember when you were raped?" Like, stop it. I don't want to remember it.
But that when you get the chance to actually see characters and actors,
you try to segue from that.
But it's really cool though. I honestly think that Badgey, I hope he comes back.
Well, we do know that if they are following, similar writing patterns of past shows that McMahan has worked on, we do get those reoccurring characters, although they did make it a point to not always bring back things that people expected.
Yes.
In various interviews, they said they didn't want to become a victim to fan service in their shows.
And I'm talking
about Dave Harmon. Is it Dave Harmon that does Rick and Morty? The showrunner, the creator?
Yes.
And also Mike McMahan in various interviews have said the same thing, that they've always tried to stay away from repeating, just because, hey, this character, Mr. Meeseeks, is so great, let's not bring him back. Let's create new, fun, and zany characters. So at the same time, yes, Badgey would be kind of cool to see, but Mike McMahan doesn't really have he doesn't really seem to be the type of guy that wants to continue.
It.
Yeah. You don't want to fall into your own tropes.
Yeah.
And I know there's some people out there, David, that doesn't want to hear this, but this episode was written pretty damn well.
It was
3 stories again. And I know there's still the trolls out there just kind of shitting on Lower Decks because they hate on everything that's Star Trek in this era, whether it's good or not. See, Dave, we shitted on the first 2 episodes because they weren't that great. But we are very objective. We are fair Star Trek fans. We are fair, and all we want to do is celebrate Star Trek. So if you give us something that we can sink our teeth in and enjoy, we're going to be fair. And I will say that this episode was written really well. 3 stories again, all started out as separate, but came together by the end. I felt like this episode was one of the first episodes that really felt like Mike McMahan's original pitch. If you remember, Dave, you and I had discussed a couple episodes ago that Lower Decks was originally conceived, or the concept was, this is the crew, Lower Decks. They're the crew that you see while Story A is happening. Story A, of course, being the immediate threat of the series, which in this, or I should say episode, which in this particular episode was Druk Mani and his crew of scavengers that were after the old Starfleet tech. So you have essentially that. In any other Star Trek show, that would be Story A. That's the story that everybody's watching, that the audience is privy to. And the things we aren't seeing are the crew members who aren't as important having a party in the midst of this entire ordeal. They're celebrating. You have people on the holodeck running through lessons. I love it because this episode really embodied the true pitch of this show. Because like you definitely get that vibe. It was weird too for me because I was watching this. I'm going, this feels weird.
And about midway through, I was like, this feels like I'm watching a TNG episode for some reason. Because like you have like what you said,
It was well
story
thought
A,
out.
right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the background's going on. And I love the fact that they absolutely played it to a T with the captain of the Sorrento and the I can't pronounce the alien's name.
It's Drugmani.
And like she's like going, no, we have to figure this out diplomatically every single time because we're the Federation.
They're playing into that whole.
They're playing into the whole thing of like
they're making it a joke while at the same time paying respect to Star Trek is really about.
Yeah, and then like after that, you have that moment with Rutherford and Tindy with Badgey, but then you have stories. I guess you could call it story C with Fletcher and Mariner and Boimler.
Yeah,
Boimler.
Yeah, you're the one who was saying it right last week.
Now I can't. I know. But like with those two, that was really cool. And it about midway through, I'm like going, I'm watching an old episode of TNG of where it's like, hey, wait a minute, this reminds me of the Barclay episode.
Well, it felt really thought out because you had the three stories that were separate eventually all come together. It was a single narrative. We just didn't realize what we were watching until the very end, that all of it matters. You had essentially, I mean, you had the bridge crew taking things by I lost my train of thought. I'm getting confused with story A, story B, story C. You have the bridge crew essentially doing their thing, and then to see how everything plays into each other by the end and how everyone's actions pays off in some way in the bigger story. I feel like this was a really good episode. It was well thought out, and I feel like the writer had an understanding of what he wanted to do. And you're right, it did feel like a mini Star Trek The Next Generation episode.
Yeah.
These are exactly the same type of scenarios we've seen our crews go through countless times, except there's that heightened comedic aspect to the episode, slightly over the top moments. But even in terms of development, you get the Lower Decks crew, you get a pretty good developing moments, just simply pairing them up and throwing them into crazy scenarios is doing wonders for their characterizations and their overall personal storylines.
Yeah. Do you realize that Mariner and Boimler, this is probably the first episode where we actually have some positivity happen to those two to make the relationship kind of grow, where it goes into a more positive, storyline or story arc than in the past.
Mariner's not just simply being toxic.
Yeah, Mariner's not toxic. And like, I thought it was really cool. See, in the very end where they're like going, yeah, you're not that bad to work with and everything. And you're getting to see that relationship organically grow.
Yes. Like I said, just simply seeing them thrown into these crazy scenarios is helping us understand them a bit. Seeing what they're willing to do for each other when under heightened situations. You have Rutherford willing to sacrifice himself to save Tindy.
Yes.
Mariner and Boimler working together to save the ship and also not throwing the douchebag Fletcher under the bus. And Dave, the whole aspect, this is Starfleet. You're not acting like Starfleet. There is some chatter on social media, and I tend to agree. Is this Mike McMahan firing shots at his boss, Alex Kurtzman? This is the third time now that I felt a subtle meta moment where he is deliberately drawing parallels to the differences in Trek eras.
Especially with this particular episode.
There's a bit of a mocking there. This is Starfleet. You're not acting like Starfleet. Even the aspect of Fletcher, who is a toxic piece of shit. They refuse to throw him under the bus because he is Starfleet.
He's Starfleet.
We are Starfleet. And as he's doing things, Mariner says, you're not acting very Starfleet. So A, Mike McMahan is either mocking all of us, or B, he's taken jabs at Alex Kurtzman. And I would go with B, Dave, and tell me if you feel differently, because there have been various moments now that I have not mentioned because I don't want to get into controversial territory where I do feel like he is drawing a line in the sand in a way that his dumb boss Kurtzman probably doesn't even pick up on.
Yeah, especially with when you take a look at the character of how Fletcher's portrayed. Fletcher is the type of character that you would see in, let's just say, a Alex Kurtzman run Star Trek show.
Well, it's not just that. Many people have complained about the Kurtzman era not feeling true to Trek because of Trek values not being respected. And the fact that Mike McMahan now has done this 2 or 3 times throughout his very short run on Lower Decks, where he stresses the importance of diplomacy, Starfleet, the fact that Captain Freeman would not shoot at the Drukmani garbage scow, whatever that thing was, even as they're being killed and they're dying and they're launching these most childish attacks by just simply trying to goat them into firing on them. It feels like he's making an argument. He's making a stand as to what Star Trek truly represents. And that could be me just listening to social media, but I also picked up on it quite a bit during this episode. It felt like he was trying to not undermine what has come before. Look at his representation of Klingons. This is canon, right?
Yes.
This is Kurtzman Star Trek, and yet the Klingons look like TNG Klingons. And not Kurtzman era Klingons that look like amphibian toads.
Yeah.
With ridges on their head.
And that I'm glad that I'm not the only one that's noticed that. I just basically...
And maybe he's simply just having a good time.
He's having a good laugh at it.
And maybe because he does seem to understand the Star Trek to some degree, maybe that's just coming through unintentionally. But it'll be interesting. And I'm mentioning it, even if it's not there, I want to mention it because I feel like you and I, Dave, moving forward, along with our listeners, let's keep our eyes peeled now. We have, 5 more episodes to go?
Yeah, 5.
We have 5 more episodes. No, we have 4. 4 more episodes to go. Let's pay attention and see if we notice anything else that we could say, hey, look, he did it again.
And then basically, like, it almost becomes kind of like...
These meta moments.
A meta moment, yes. Yeah. And, like, I think that's his strength. I mean, look what he does with Dan Harmon and company and Rick and Morty. They are masters of doing the meta moment.
Oh yeah.
So to be able to actually do that, this is something now I hate to say it because
go back and rewatch, Dave. Go back and rewatch the first 6 episodes, and you're probably going to pick up some moments.
Probably.
And maybe, Dave, they're not there. Maybe there is no ill intention from Mike McMahan towards Kurtzman. Maybe it's just simply, hey, this is what happens when you have an actual fan of Star Trek, not someone who says, hey, I'm a fan of Star Trek and I watched just one season of one show. Maybe this is what happens. Maybe we just get a guy that it just feels more consistent and we are just noticing these moments because it is such a stark contrast from anything Kurtzman has given us in terms of Trek and respecting what came before. You know, and regardless, I feel like there is a level of respect from, or I should say, of what came before.
Of what came before.
And possibly, maybe that's what I'm seeing, Dave. Maybe that's the feelings I'm getting. Maybe it's simply the fact that Mike McMahan does not want to forget what came before.
Oh, yeah. Because, like, for me, it's now like everyone started this series trying to find the Easter eggs. But the last couple of episodes, the Easter eggs they have more substance to them. You know, they're
not just simply Easter eggs.
Yeah, they're not just simply Easter eggs. He's actually giving a little story nod to these moments to actually make sure it connects with Star Trek, not reminds us of Star Trek, but connects to Star Trek.
Right. He's even building his own mythos. If you remember, I want to say during our very first discussion for episode 1, one of the few things I asked for was just simply, I wanted this show to be something unique and something that you can say and point to and say it's its own version of Trek, and not just simply an excuse to have some jokes and be essentially a Trek parody. But we're getting a bit of that mythos built for just this show.
For just the show.
Lower Decks isn't just simply making references to previous Trek shows any longer. Sure, they're still doing it, and they probably will continue to. They are doing some callbacks already to earlier episodes, building up their own mythos. I believe in episode 3, it was revealed that the Cerritos has a 4-shift rotation, and that Delta shift was the coolest in an annoying way. In this week's episode, we finally meet the Delta shift, who appeared to be essentially cooler versions of the show's 4 main characters.
Yeah. That's why I was cracking up at their better versions.
Yeah.
Better versions of them. Better
and cooler versions. They had literally, they were mirror versions, just cooler versions. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I really enjoyed, because like now we're seeing more than just the 4 crew members. They're actually giving some basis to the Cerritos crew.
They're building the show.
They're building the show.
They're building its own mythos, which is all we wanted. We wanted this to be able to stand on its own and say, hey, this is a viable piece of Trek. Yes, it's comedy, but at the end of the day, it is its own show.
And not only were they building the mythos of the Cerritos, but they were also building the universe around the Cerritos. I mean, I love when they say that Fletcher gets promoted to Titan.
Yeah, that was good.
And I'm like going, not even Titan's never even brought up in today's Star Trek. This is the first time it's ever brought up. So like the
was
fact
Titan not mentioned in Picard?
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Because like if it was, Mike, why isn't Riker on Titan?
Yeah. Oh, he wasn't even on Titan.
He wasn't even on Titan.
Yeah, that's right. He was in some miscellaneous starship.
Yeah, that was Photoshop. Let's not think about it, Mike. Let's not think. But
he showed up with Photoshop fleet. Hey, we're here, guys, and we're going to do nothing. We're going to let an old man who's 90 talk down Romulans that have such deep-seated or deep-rooted hate that their entire culture was built on for centuries, and a 90-year-old man and a small child are going to be able to talk down this entire armada, as long as you promise that you will not attack us.
So,
farewell.
But like,
never mind, we murdered people. Thank you for letting us walk scot-free. Thank you.
But see, this is why I say Lower Decks gets it better than the show that shall not be named right now.
Without a doubt. The show is finding itself. Each episode is getting stronger and stronger.
And stronger.
Yeah. And the teaser this week was so funny. I'm not going to lie, Dave. I rewound it 5 times to rewatch that opening teaser when Boimler says he sometimes hums warp engine sounds to soothe himself. And then you show all 4 ensigns showing off how they could recreate the ambient warp engine sounds of the Cerritos, along with Voyager and, of course, Enterprise D. Dude, that was really funny.
And then, like, the punchline for it was, like, I forgot the character's name, the first officer, basically calling security and saying something is wrong with the crew.
Yeah.
And then that moment just really, it characterizes the crew of the Cerritos perfectly. You know, you have this division in ranks where it's like the bridge crew don't care about the lower decks. And if they see them doing weird things, they think it's weird. And like, you get to the point where you get introduced to the Delta crew, and the Delta shift looks down at the lower decks crew, and it just helps characterize the crew of the Cerritos, that how diverse in a bad way that they are.
Yeah, I agree. Dave, we do need to go to a very quick break. We are getting to that point. And then when we come back, let's jump into some Easter eggs. Do you mind pulling up an Easter egg list?
I can.
And we'll go through them and we'll do our usual thing. We'll decide, do we agree it's an Easter egg or is it a shit attempt at clickbait? We'll be right back.
Energize.
All right, everyone, make sure you pledge to our Patreon page. You can get more Star Trek from the Holodeck discussions every single month by subscribing. Head over to patreon.com/RainmanDigital and pledge $5 or more a month and gain access to a plethora of Star Trek discussions, including our Star Trek pre-shows that we do. Pretty much before every single show, we do a secret discussion about various topics pertaining to Star Trek. So head over to patreon.com/RainmanDigital and pledge.
Free stuff is awesome, but free stuff that will spice up your bedroom is even better. Just go to adamandeve.com and select almost any one item for 50% off, and then we'll load on the free stuff. Just enter this very exclusive code, RAINMAN, at checkout, and you'll get 10 tantalizing free gifts, including a sexy item for him, a special toy for her, and a third item you'll both enjoy. And 6 extra special bonus items that are sure to rev your engine, pique your curiosity, and even blow you away. Plus, free shipping! Always sent in discreet packaging. Go to adamandeve.com now. Get 50% off plus the 10 free gifts when you enter the exclusive offer code RAINMAN. Again, that's RAINMAN, because without it, no free stuff. That's RAINMAN at adamandeve.com.
Commander Klingon vessel. We are energizing transporter beam. Now.
Transporter, stand by.
Welcome back, everyone, to Star Trek from the Holodeck, the Lower Decks edition. Remember, you can find us on Stitcher and iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. Just search From the Holodeck. Leave us reviews, give us thumbs up, talk to us. We want to hear from you, even if it's just to say fuck off. We don't like you. I will gladly accept that. All right, Dave, do you have that Easter?
Yes, I do. I have list? It from trekmovie.com.
All right, why don't you take us through that?
All right, so we have the Easter egg list from trekmovie.com. It's titled From Barclay to Clippy, Star Trek Lower Decks Easter Eggs and Terminal Provocation. The first one that they
was
have,
referenced?
Dude, did you not notice this?
I didn't pick that up.
You didn't? Okay. This is honestly my favorite moment in the series. You know, Badgey was awesome. Yeah, of the series right now, because
that's a bit hyperbolic there.
Because
Calm down.
The Easter egg of this is called "Not as Smart as Barclay." This episode introduced Ensign Fletcher, who creator Mike McMahan has said in Lower Decks, he is the virgin. I'm a virgin
too.
He is the version of Reginald Barclay for Lower Decks, an engineer from Star Trek Next Generation who, like Fletcher, has serious issues with lack of self-confidence. In Lower Decks, we saw Fletcher disastrously fail to make himself smarter by plugging his brain into a computer core.
Oh, okay.
In the TNG episode Nth Degree, an alien probe enhanced Barclay's intelligence, and eventually he used the holodeck to integrate himself into the ship's computer to get even smarter.
Okay, I do remember that. I just didn't make that connection.
Dude, when he plugged himself back, he plugged himself in, and you have the helmet and the
Fletcher's not really a version of Barclay, though. Fletcher was a D-bag. Barclay was never a D-bag. He was just a stuttering mess of anxiety and low self-esteem.
Did you forget what his holodeck thing was?
That's not douchey. That's perverse. And let's be honest, Dave, all of us would do that. The first thing I would do with a holodeck would be, computer, please begin program to Paul 7, please.
But think about it. Fletcher started off basically being everyone's favorite because, like, he's saying, oh, no, I can take care of this. I'll take care of this for you guys. You guys are awesome. You guys are my friends. What does Barkley do in the very first episode? He treats everyone as if he wants to be their friend, but he's so socially...
He hates them, yeah.
He's socially awkward.
Barkley's all of us.
Yes.
Barkley literally is all of us.
And, like, when you look at Fletcher is like a polar opposite of Barkley, but they're both, like, the same type of characteristics.
Yeah. All right, so what else do we have on that list?
We have, of course, Clippy's Revenge, which is Tandy and Rutherford's storyline in this episode probably takes place in a malfunctioning holodeck. A trope of the TNG era shows starting in the first season of Star Trek with the big goodbye. The holographic adversary goes rogue.
Are these parodies or Easter eggs? Because that would be a parody.
It would be. Do you think it'd be a parody?
I think if you're, it's a parody. You're parodying a scene that we've seen before. I wouldn't really call that an Easter egg, would you?
Part of me says it'd be an Easter egg just because of how Badgey was. The way Badgey is,
I think people are getting confused with parody, continuity, and Easter eggs. I think they're just kind of lumping all of them together.
I could see that.
Did they literally did he reference Clippy? Yes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Clippy is the thing for Microsoft.
Yes.
See, even that wouldn't be an Easter egg. That would be a parody. David, if you were to trip and fall right now because you said, oh, I got to run to the bathroom, Mike, and then suddenly I recreate that, that's not an Easter egg. That would be me making a parody of you falling. You get what I'm saying?
No, I do.
Dude, we've already established what an Easter egg is. An Easter egg is if there's something in the background, possibly. Let's say there's a picture of Picard on the wall of someone's, I don't want to get into this discussion. We've already had this discussion 100 times. Just go through that list fairly quick.
Fairly quick?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's about 3 more that they actually mentioned. One is the spacewalk romance, because it's recreating a romantic visual from Star Trek Voyager episode Day of Honor, when Tom and B'Elanna finally admit their love and they're floating out in space.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That might be like what you mentioned earlier. That's more of an homage.
Yeah, a little bit of a parody.
Parody.
Right.
They do Antares to Titan, which is the abandoned cargo ship from the registration NCC 502 had the same design as the Antares.
I read that one, but that's kind of a reach. That's just that's adhering to the architecture of Trek at that time.
That is true.
Yeah.
And then the last one is the Titan reference, when at the end of the episode, Fletcher is transferred to the USS Titan.
Yeah, and again, I don't think that's an Easter egg. That's continuity. That's establishing that there's a ship out there flying that we know exists. I just wouldn't call that an Easter egg. That's continuity. That's like calling holodecks an Easter egg because holodecks are on other ships as well. Oh, it's an Easter egg. Like, no, that's just establishing that holodecks exist in this time frame.
And that's all the
that's
Easter
it?
eggs. Yes. That's they brought up in this article.
What a bunch of losers. All right, Dave, let's get into our final thoughts. Give me your final thoughts as well as your RMD score.
Okay, my final thoughts on this episode. I said last episode was my favorite episode, but this episode's my favorite episode.
No, you didn't say last episode was your favorite.
No,
you said you said the Ascension one.
Oh, the Ascension one was my favorite.
Yeah.
But this one is now my favorite. It introduced Badgey. The Badgey stuff was just
you're such a
cool.
Trek nerd. This was my favorite now.
This is my favorite now because the jokes landed perfectly in this one.
Yeah.
And like, I give a lot of props to Mike McMahon's the way he wrote the Trek joke for Fletcher. I appreciated that more when I came to realize I didn't know that this connection between Fletcher and Barkley was happening till my second go around with this episode, when I read that in an interview about this particular episode, Mike McMahon literally said the reason why he created Fletcher, this is his Reginald Barkley. And I was like going, oh my God, when you see what Fletcher does, it's exactly what Barkley does. And that whole episode of the ninth gate, I think it's I forgot what it's called now. The nth way is brilliantly done. when you take a look at the storyline C of Mariner and Boilermer and Fletcher, that's a ripoff of the Barclay episode that I actually really do like. It is one of my favorite TNG episodes of all of TNG. So with that said, obviously I've been gushing around it. I'm going to surprise everyone. This is the first Lower Decks I have written down here that gets a 90.
Jeez.
It gets a 90 because you got all the comedy writing done. You got all the Trek humor down. All your the story growth and the character progression of all your characters moved forward from last episode.
Yeah.
Mariner does not seem like a dick anymore. She actually is very. I think that she.
Are you going to cry over there?
I was joking.
It's so good. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. See, look how easy,
Mike McMahan.
We're so easy.
We are.
We're easy.
Dude.
We just want to be given something that feels like you fucking care. If the show,
exactly.
If it feels like the showrunner and the writers care, guess what? We're gonna like it. If it feels like a fuck you and I don't give a fuck what you think, like Mike Shaban and Picard, we're gonna cry and hate you for it.
Yeah, but when you give us something great,
or even just something not
shitty.
Adequate. We are happy we're happy about it because we're easy. We just want to enjoy things.
Exactly. And this is the first time in a long time when I looked at a Star Trek episode and I said, you know what? I'm fully enjoying this. I'm laughing out loud. And by the end of it, I want to watch this again. And this is the first Lower Decks episode that I actually wrote down in my notes.
Yeah.
I watched multiple times just because I had a good laugh about it.
Yeah. All right, Dave. I don't disagree. I think you and I are on the same page when it comes to this episode here. It is the strongest episode. The Ascension episode comes pretty close, but I believe I gave that episode an 85%.
85.
I'm going to give this one an 89%. It's very strong. Solid episode. It was well written as well. So I feel like the Holodecks, or I should say the Lower Decks writers, have found their groove. They know what they want to do. It was a little rocky at the beginning with the first two episodes, but they're slowly finding themselves and understanding what they want their show to be. You're telling 3 stories in parallel with each other. They all come together at the end. It essentially feels like a comedic version of a TNG episode in many ways. This is what I wanted. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to like it because I enjoyed it, not like it because I feel like I need to like it because of Star Trek. And I will definitely say a large portion of my grade is coming from the multiple storylines that all merged, and then the opening teaser, which made me laugh so loud, and I rewound it 4 times. I don't do that. The fact that it evoked that type of feeling, where I'm like, I got to see this again, and I laughed just as hard the second and third time. That's a positive.
That's a positive.
So I want to thank everyone for listening. This does bring us to the end of our discussions. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Live long and prosper.
I couldn't help but notice your pain.
My pain.
It runs deep. Share it with me.
End simulation.